In autistic burnout, it is the result of excessive stress that has been maintained over a long period of time that leads to a loss of skills and abilities, and sometimes can be permanently lost, or if they are temporarily lost, sometimes when those skills and abilities return after restoration, they do not return to the same level they were before you went into burnout. After you start to recover from burnout, most people find themselves on what I call the chronic cycle burnout trap, the loop, and that is you're right back in it a couple weeks or a couple months later because you've gone back to life as usual and you haven't done things, made shifts in your thinking and shifts in your life to get those needs met. Like I have a routine, but I also, my ADHD side of my brain likes to have the novelty of some variety. So I have a variety of, these are the things that I do. One of my biggest needs is that I have to have at least one person that I have authentic connection with, that I can say all the scary things sometimes that happen in my head to that person and they're not afraid, and we can have a heart-to-heart conversation about it without fear of judgment and all the stuff. And I've got that. And do you know that we're the norm? That is like how most of the women that I coach and that are in my community have come to their autistic identification late in life has been through their children. I totally get where you're going, and I'm going to tell you the answer to that is because we've learned to mask and camouflage based on female societal norms for so long, we wouldn't dare tell anybody that. No one would ever know, and that's why we get missed. The core problem, the core issue, which is that the medical diagnostic model is broken and ineffective.
I feel by 39 you have like your life under control. So like it's just...
Really? Oh man, I don't know. So far from no.
Well, you know what
I went through that same process because that's part of the processing phase when you first learned you're autistic late in life. You do all those what ifs. What if I'd known earlier? Would my life be different now? Would I have struggled so much? And blah, blah, blah. Everything was kid focused. Everything was kid centric. There's nothing for, hey, you're in your 40s and you're autistic, surprise, which my friend Diane has, surprise, you're autistic. And she and Danielle and I actually got together and we have the autistic community now, which is really phenomenal. But I found when I converse with other autistics who are also alexithymic, we have this understanding. People who are autistic, because we ask questions, we're trying to understand, or we're trying to understand a why or a detail so that it makes sense to us so that we can execute it, because we want to execute what somebody is asking us for.
Okay. Hello, welcome to my podcast, to Mics One JoeySooch. I am JoeySooch, and I'll be giving a mic to Carole. She's a late identified ADHD autistic, has alexithymia and ADHD. She's known as social Audie throughout the autism community. She has her own talk show called Mind Your Autistic Brain Talk Show for late identified autistic. Every Wednesday, how are you today?
So earlier this week, I had a conversation with a coaching client, and we were talking about burnout, because that's kind of my jam. I talk about autistic burnout. And one of the things that I hadn't recognized, and this is crazy, right? This is crazy. I hadn't recognized I'm entering year 3 of not gone into autistic burnout. That's a record. I started my first autistic burnout at 6. I'm 47. So I just spent going on 3 years right now. I'm entering year 3. I haven't been in autistic burnout.
So let's...
And it requires a lot of energy.
Before you go, so let's explain autistic burnout. So what is autistic burnout?
Autistic burnout differs from neurotypical burnout. So a neurotypical person will say, especially in work-related situation, I'm in burnout. And you might have difficulty getting things done. You may feel more tired, less motivated. But when you're looking at autistic burnout, the difference in particular is that in autistic burnout, it is the result of excessive stress that has been maintained over a long period of time that leads to a loss of skills and abilities, and sometimes can be permanently lost, or if they are temporarily lost, sometimes when those skills and abilities return after restoration, they do not return to the same level they were before you went into burnout.
But what's the difference between then, if you're just So like one of the big things that autistic people can do is like go to a concert, for example, or they can go and then they get overwhelmed. So like, what's the difference between overwhelmed during a concert and then like a burnout?
Okay, so overwhelm, like in a concert or a sensory overwhelm
Yeah.
situation, that's a temporary response to sensory stimuli. So that's going to be temporary. And in temporary, I mean, 'cause sometimes I've had, and that could be considered a meltdown.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a temporary. A shutdown is also, and we'll talk about that in a second, that's also a temporary. But burnout is a longer term. Sometimes it can take weeks, months, or years, depending how bad the burnout is, how long you've gone in depletion mode, not getting your needs met. But if you go to a concert and let's say you get overwhelmed, too much light, too much sound, too many people and all the stuff, and you have like a shutdown or a meltdown, that temporary response can be a couple hours, and then kind of have what we call like the autistic hangover from that for 2 or 3 days, where you just feel like still kind of wiped out. It's like if you ran a marathon and you didn't practice, right? It's like just physical, emotional, just exhaustion. But you recover from it, you restore from it pretty quickly within hours or days. In autistic burnout, that's not happening. It didn't take you overnight to get in autistic burnout. You didn't get there overnight. You're not going to get out of it overnight. There has been a long-term buildup of a need deficit, and it takes intentional things. And when you get out, when you're restoring from burnout, when you're getting out of burnout, you can't go back to life as normal. Because life as normal is what got you in autistic
So what
burnout.
are the symptoms
It,
of an autistic burnout then? Just
well, a few of them are chronic physical exhaustion, brain fog, executive dysfunction. Like you just can't seem to get from point A to point B. You're easily distracted. That's a really big one for a lot of people. Migraines can be one of them, that a lot of people report getting a lot more migraines. There's a lot of physiological things, but some of the emotional stuff is that your depression and anxiety levels are just skyrocketed, more so than like what you would consider your norm as an autistic human. Your sensory sensitivities can be one extreme or the other. They can either be exacerbated, and your sensory sensitivities are so heightened that even the wind blowing across your skin is painful, whereas normally maybe that wouldn't bother you. Or it can be the opposite, and your sensory sensitivities were normally, that buzzing fluorescent light drives you crazy, you don't even hear it. And each person is going to have, a similar set of experiences as far as what signposts are, but each person also has individual signposts for their autistic burnout. And here's the thing to really note is that your autistic burnout today is not the same exact autistic burnout that you maybe experienced 10 years ago or 5 years ago, and it's not the same one you're going to experience 5 years or 2 years from now if you have it again. Each instance of an autistic burnout will have commonalities, but they will also have variations because you're not also the same person that you were in each burnout. So that's a really important part of what I do in the Burnout to Balance program in the Unveiling Method, is that I help you identify what are the signposts, because we have these signposts that are our indicators that say, hey, your need's not getting met, and it's not getting met long enough. It's starting to show up in your life, in how you're feeling, how you're thinking, how you're operating and functioning every day, and you need to take note of it. And you need to do something to make sure that need's getting met. And these are things that really are about making life changes. Because if you go back to life as usual, quote unquote, after you start to recover from burnout, most people find themselves on what I call the chronic cycle burnout trap, the loop. And that is, you're right back in it a couple weeks or a couple months later because you've gone back to life as usual and you haven't done things, made shifts in your thinking and shifts in your life to get those needs met so that you're not ending back up in that same place again.
so
And I speak from experience that I was on that treadmill. I was on that chronic loop for decades.
So you mentioned that you have needs of an autistic person. So what are the needs of an autistic person?
That's going to vary from autistic person to autistic person. But
So let's go with your
taking
needs
time
then.
to get to know
So
yourself.
what are your needs as an autistic person?
Well, I mean, as an autistic person, my needs are that I have flexibility in my schedule. Like I have a routine, but I also, my ADHD side of my brain likes to have the novelty of some variety. So I have a variety of these are the things that I do. Like every Thursday is laundry day for me, and I have 2 size hampers that are 1 load of laundry. And I know that every week that is a manageable amount for me. So my need is that that's consistent. But I also have, I don't have like a set email schedule and stuff like that. I sort of write as the moment spurs me. So I allow myself that novelty of writing emails as they come to me. I don't write one every day. I don't write one every Thursday or whatever. So I have structure, but I have flexibility for novelty. My clothes are really important to me, like what I wear. Fabric, the material that touches my skin, matters, because when it's uncomfortable or it's itchy or it's too loose or too tight, then on a subconscious level, my brain is constantly worrying about it and it's bugging my brain. And so that requires energy. So I threw out and donated a ton of clothes, and I'm just really intentional with what I wear now. I wear headphones because that helps my sensory need and my auditory processing delay. I found that when I use my headset, I have a much better opportunity to process audio than if I have them off and I'm trying to like filter through ambient noise in my environment and focus on what someone's saying. So my headphones really help isolate that. I have to eat a certain way. Like I have dietary restrictions because, I don't do gluten, and I have one of the things that was sort of a fun, not fun, I'm being sarcastic here, thing to notice was like, I have a very low carbohydrate tolerant threshold in my diet. And if I get over about 25 to 30 carbs a day consistently, like 2 or 3 days in a row, if I get up around 50, my joints hurt and I feel crappy. So it's really important. I have to be diligent about what I eat and, what my macros and all those fun things that you can keep up with on your phone nowadays. Thank gosh. So those are some of my needs. And one of my biggest needs is that I have to have at least one person that I have authentic connection with, that I can say all the scary things sometimes that happen in my head to that person and they're not afraid, and we can have a heart-to-heart conversation about it without fear of judgment and all the stuff. And I've got that. Josh is my person for that. He's my authentic connection relationship. And I never knew that was possible. I didn't know it was possible. And it's been probably one of the best things about late identified life for me.
Move to a different topic right now. So I've interviewed another autistic woman named Danielle Sylvan. She's super great. She had a late diagnosis of being autistic.
She's a good friend of mine. Yeah. We actually talked yesterday.
Oh, really? Yeah, she's wonderful. I will love to hang out with her. So she... Oh,
me too.
She also had a late diagnosis of being autistic after the birth of her kids. It is also common for women to not be diagnosed much later in their lives. It seems you guys have the same storyline of you had kids, then diagnosed with autism, so is this another reason to not have kids?
Or it's actually just made the case for having kids so you can actually get the answer to your life's question of why is my life so hard?
I feel like there's other steps you can
I
take
wouldn't trade it
to get to that,
Joey, I think Danielle and I agree with you 100% on the fact that we would love to find other avenues to get to this answer so much earlier, so much sooner for all of us.
I mean, imagine the doctor
not just the moms.
Imagine the doctor tell you, like, have you thought about having kids, and then maybe you'll have your life under control.
That'd be about the quacker answer you get for a lot of things nowadays.
You were both diagnosed with autism after you had kids, right?
Yes.
So, like, how did you find it? How did you get diagnosed with autism then? Because the way Danielle did it, she thinks her son is autistic. So when she was going to she was there at the test. So when he was going to the test, she kind of like applied whatever they were doing on her, and then she was like had like get like a eureka moment of maybe she's autistic and looked into it. So like what?
Well, you see, Danielle is like way smarter than me. way more self-aware than me. I was going through the diagnostic process with my eldest son, and I'm reading through the questions. Now, here's probably where the alexithymia part came in for me. And as I'm reading through the questions and answering them, because you, as the parent, answer them for your child, because he was 10. And I'm reading through these questions and I'm like, I do that. Well, that's not weird. I do that. I remember doing that as a kid, or I think that way. The penny didn't drop, Joey. Like, I was still clueless. Until that doctor looked at me and said, you were missed, I still hadn't put 2 and 2 together. I was still at 1. Danielle's just way sharper than me.
No, it's just crazy that you both have literally the same exact storyline of how you got diagnosed with autism.
And do you know that we're the norm? That is like how most of the women that I coach and that are in my community have come to their autistic identification late in life has been through their children.
It's just crazy to me that women are not diagnosed as early because, like, a lot of symptoms you were talking about, so like the feelings symptoms that you have that you just don't know how you're feeling, but that's kind of like the women's area. So I feel like because like men don't, I mean, we have feelings, but like we don't really show it as much. So I just feel like it'd be more apparent in a woman to not have these feelings or the right feeling versus men where like it doesn't matter as much.
I totally get where you're going, and I'm going to tell you the answer to that is because we've learned to mask and camouflage based on female societal norms for so long, we wouldn't dare tell anybody that. No one would ever know, and that's why we get missed.
I don't know. It just seems like, I don't know, like we were playing like a hide and seek game of like who's autistic and who's not. Like you'd be like called out so fast. So like, I don't know. It doesn't make sense. I can kind of understand with the masculine stuff, but like it doesn't make sense when you look at where women are usually more emotional and they should, like if there's something wrong with them of how they feel, I feel like you would look more into that, like, you know?
Well, that goes back to the core problem, the core issue, which is that the medical diagnostic model is broken and ineffective.
It's so dumb though, like thinking about it.
There's a lot of things that are dumb if we really think about it.
I know, we're highlighting it one day at a time, you know? So I just want everyone to know that autism doesn't come from kids. You know, there are thousands of other reasons to not have kids. So like,
and there's thousands of reasons to have those little stinky buggers.
No, I'm gonna be one of those guys that never have kids. Like people will be like, it's the most amazing moments ever, but like throughout their whole life, they're like, I want to throw my children off the bridge, and God, why don't they just stop crying and like all these bad things? And like, and then you want me to have kids? No.
Look, that's the thing, and I think we all hear those things, right? Those conflicting things. Like, kids are great, but I want to kill mine, right? It's like, oh, I could love you to death, and some days I wish I had. But look, that's just a personal choice. That is one of those things where, like, it is nobody else's business if you choose to procreate or not. And whether you know, and it's, who's to say that you have to biologically procreate? Oh my gosh, I have some amazing friends they're adopted, and that's exactly what has made their parents' life, the thing that it was to be a parent, and they couldn't do it. And so, I think we come to that decision about parenthood either by intention or by default. I mean, who's to say you don't just get knocked up or, whatever. But that's nobody else's business or anybody else's journey but your own on that one.
I'm just afraid.
What somebody else thinks is their business.
Yeah, I'm just afraid that, like, I'm going to raise a dumb kid. Like, there's so much you can do to help a child, but, like, what if they're just a dumb kid and it's, like, I can't do anything about it? That's what I'm afraid of. Like, I want to raise, like, a LeBron James,
Well, so you're setting kind of a high bar and some big expectations, man. I have kids that are tall enough to be LeBron James if they want.
I mean, there you go. But, yeah, like, I want to, like, there's so much you can do to help raise a child, but, like, what if the child is just dumb or like whatever they like do drugs or something, it's like I have to worry about them, but like like there's so much you can like teach them and they absorb. So like I can't deal with that negative, and I can't deal with that. Like if I don't give them ice cream one time, they're gonna bring it to the day I die. Like remember the time you didn't give me ice cream and then unplug my machine? And I,
That's your big fear, Joey. Oh man, I love it.
yeah, like I'm gonna be like,
It-
yeah, I'm gonna be like shit. Like I don't know. Like kids are very impressionable, and I just can't deal with that. Or like, what if I'm very sarcastic? What if the kid is not sarcastic? Then it's like, like we're kind of roommates. It can be hard to live together when we have totally different communication styles. Like too much.
That's a really great thing. I think about what Allie and I have created in the neurodiverse communication system is that we've created a bridge for all of that. And it's not just about a neurodistinct neurotype, it's about all neurotypes. And how do we start to come together to have authentic connection and communication when we're two totally different communicators? How do we start to see and connect with the other person and still be able to communicate in our own natural style? It's pretty important.
Emojis help. Like GIFs help. That sometimes do it. You know. So like I have here, you were diagnosed at 39. I feel by 39 you should have like your life under control. So like it's just
Really? Oh man, I don't know. So far from no.
well, when we're growing up, like you think the adults have like everything under control, and we're just still winging it. It's just crazy that you're still don't know all about yourself and like diseases. Like you mentioned that you might have Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. I feel like that's something you should know by now, but it's crazy that you're just always discovering your body, even 40 years later, 80 years later, forever.
And I think that's probably where we get into trouble, is that somewhere early in our life we were indoctrinated to believe that when we're adults, quote unquote, for those of you who are maybe just listening, quote unquote adults, that we have our crap together, that we've got it figured out, that we know ourselves and we know our place in the world, right? Like that's the belief that we're given. That's the ideal of what adulting is. Like you pay your bills, you do your stuff, you do what you're supposed to do, and you're living an adult, responsible, mature, whatever you want to label it, life. And the reality, at least the reality I have come to experience and the belief that I have now ascribed to, because I used to believe that. Like that was the belief I agreed to. And I fully onboarded that and almost killed myself trying to do that. And none of it was working. And so I had to look at that belief and go, well, is that really what adulting is all about? Is this what it means to be an adult? And I'm like, not for me. Not for me, it isn't. It might be for somebody else, but it's not for me. And really, that was the place that in this late identified life, that was a big part of getting out of burnout and getting out of those really harsh, mean self-talk and beating myself up at every turn because I wasn't hitting these, marks of like, oh, I didn't have this house by this age. I wasn't driving this car. I wasn't, my kids weren't going to this school and blah, 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 right? And I hadn't accomplished this in my career. I mean, it's like, oh my God, you're on job 10. What the hell? And you judge yourself and you're so hard on yourself when you've got those when you've ascribed to those beliefs and not really step back and go, well, is this true for me? Or is this even true for anybody? I mean, sure, maybe. But it's, well, what does it mean for me to live a wholehearted life? And I'm an adult by definition, okay? I'm over 18 and I live, independently for the most part, but no one lives independently and neither do I.
So
someone's always helping us,
yeah,
right?
so how do you feel that, like you mentioned that, like, by 30 people have a house, like, I guess 35, you're like married and have kids. So like, how does it feel now that, your autism where you have to have everything structured, but like life didn't go that way? So was it like an internal conflict in a way, or like an added pressure you added to yourself from the society to do it?
Oh, it was all added pressure from internally. because I had those societal norms and pressures and expectations that I'd agreed to because I thought that was the way I was supposed to do it. And I was killing myself trying to do it. And, you know, you get to a point, I don't know if it's just when you get in your 40s or if it's just when you learn you're autistic, because all of it happened at one time for me. And now I'm just like, look, I have to do what works for me. I have to do things in a way that are working for me and with me and not against me. I'm trying to live up to all those societal norms and the beliefs that I was killing myself trying to meet because I thought that's what made me a worthy person. And if we're going to get real deep on it, it goes to those subconscious beliefs of I'm broken, I'm defective, I'm not worthy of love, I'm not good enough. And that was just a load of crap I believed too. And the gift was that I learned I'm not. I'm just wired differently. And I work just fine. I just work in a different way. And it doesn't make it any less than. And when I embraced that, I started to just, instead of fighting it, started to embrace it and go with it. Man, life is just so much easier. It's so much happier.
It feels really great.
Peaceful and pleasant place to be.
It feels really great to be our 100% selves.
I don't know that I'm 100% myself. I mean, I try to be. I'm sure that because there's probably 10 or 20% I still don't know yet. And that's the fun part is till the day I die, I'm still going to be learning more about me.
That's kind of scary though to think about too.
Nah, to me, that's exciting. To me, the curiosity and the discovery of new things about myself, that's exciting.
It's exciting, but it's also like, how come I couldn't find about this like 10 years ago? Or like when you meet people, like, how come I didn't like talk to you 10 years ago? You know, have helped so much. You know, like now, you're kind of like reliving in a way. That makes sense. Like you get like a new spark.
Oh yeah, it makes total sense. That's part of the processing phase in late identified life is all the what ifs and if I had known this and if I had done this and all this, would my life be different? And I went through that same process because that's part of the processing phase when you first learned you're autistic late in life. You do all those what ifs. What if I'd known earlier? Would my life be different now? Would I have struggled so much? And blah, blah, blah. And you can stay in that and you can go down that rabbit hole and you can follow that train of thought all you want. And it's part of it to have it. And it's healthy to kind of just get all of it out because you just have to. It's just part of how our brain seeks the safety of things. But there's also a point where you're just like, okay, I can continue to what if it at this point, but I've kind of what ifed all the big stuff. And now it's just, I know what I know now. And the gift is that I now know it. And everything that's showing up in my life from this point forward, I can judge it and say it's late. I can judge it and say, if I'd only known this 10 years ago, my life would be different. Well, sure, maybe. But maybe 10 years ago, you weren't in a place where you could receive it. And today you are. Today you're in a place to receive whatever that person shared with you. And it's the perfect time. We're never late. We're never early. We're always right on time. Things show up in our life when we need them and when we're ready for them. And that's just the philosophy I go with. I choose it. It's the belief that I chose. And it works for me. It may not work for somebody else, but it works for me.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how long you've been doing this career, but I'm going to assume 5 years ago we were definitely not doing what we're doing right now.
Nope.
So I'm glad we're both on the same path, I guess, and we were able to meet and chat and get to know each other.
Me too, Joey, and I love what you do in the world.
I mean, the podcast is not ending though. I know we're getting like the really sentimental part, but the podcast is definitely not ending right now. So we're gonna jump into the next thing. So we talked a lot about ADHD and ASD. So on to 2013, the dual and co-occurring diagnosis of having both ADHD and ASD was not permissible per the American Pediatric Association diagnostic guidelines. A little weird that you just couldn't be diagnosed with two diseases. Like life would be so simple that way. So let's talk the metaphor of a fork in the road. You have an article on it. You were originally diagnosed with ADHD that didn't explain all your symptoms mixed with a misdiagnosis of bipolar and unneeded medication. Then officially diagnosed with autism. Did you have a Ryuka moment with autism when you were diagnosed?
Not at first, honestly. You know, probably alexithymia. Like ADHD made sense but it didn't fully make sense. I was in my late 20s, and I was like, God, this probably would have helped in, high school and college to have known this when I was really struggling with some executive function and focus skills because I'm a combined type. And when I received, and of course I had this guy in my early 20s say, oh, you're bipolar, blah, blah, blah. And I'm just like, I tried the medication. It made everything worse. And I was just like, this just doesn't feel right, And I went to somebody else and they're like, no, I definitely don't see this. And I'm like, okay, because that just didn't feel like it fit for me. So that one was pretty easy to kind of clean out of the thing because the medicine wasn't working. The things really didn't align. And, I think he was just probably slapping some stuff on there just to get me out of his office, to be honest with you. But when I was identified as autistic at 39, when I was going through the process with my son and then, kind of took it on for myself, it took about 2 years really for it to sort of percolate down and sit with me. I didn't actively take action on it and really start looking at it for myself and applying what that being autistic meant for me. Because my first thought was, well, holy crud, if I was missed and there's all of these things, occupational therapy and all these different interventions that they're saying my son needs and accommodations in school that he needs, and I didn't get those, and I'm looking at them and I'm going, God, that would have helped me so much. How can I not just focus everything that I have to make sure my son gets all of these things, So I just kind of, in my mom mode, I'm like, we're just going to hit pause on this. I'll circle back to it because right now my son is struggling. Mm-hmm. He is miserable and he needs the help. So it took about 2 years to kind of get to a place where he had all the services that he needed. He was getting occupational therapy and all the stuff, and IEP was in place, and he was getting good things at school, and he was starting to thrive and do well. And that was also at the point, I think, that I hit, another burnout, and I was just like, okay, I think maybe I need to look at the whole me as autistic person and figure out what that means for me, because obviously I miss so much somewhere not knowing this. And if this has helped my son get to this point where he's doing really well, and it's just taken these things, maybe I need these too, and it's time to start looking at it.
So how did you look at yourself? So did you go to therapy and then like kind of talk it out, or were you just thinking about your life and like all the embarrassing moments that we all wish we could forget? It's like, how did you piece together this was because I had the autism and now it makes total sense? Like, how did it go with you?
Well, it's kind of one of the reasons that I was so adamant about starting Mind Your Autistic Brain is because I started all by myself. I wasn't given any resources. There's nothing, other than what has been created in the last couple of years by actually autistic adults. There's nothing. There wasn't anything out there. There wasn't even like online autistic community when I first started looking, really. Everything was kid focused. Everything was kid centric. There's nothing for, hey, you're in your 40s and you're autistic, surprise, which my friend Diane has, surprise, you're autistic. And she and Danielle and I actually got together and we have the autistic community now, which is really phenomenal. But there's just, I did it all by myself, and I did it messy, and I did it where it probably took 2 to 3 times longer than it needed to or should have. And I didn't go to therapy because I couldn't find anybody that was autistic to talk to. That was a really big problem. It was a bunch of autism experts, which a bunch of neurotypical people thinking they know what it is to be autistic. And I'm sorry, that just never felt good. Because I'm like, you really don't get it. Sorry, you're not my person.
Autistic therapists not be good for you just because they're not able to process. I get it that they're able to understand you, but at the same time, you kind of need like a different perspective and like a normal, from a normal kind of person. If that makes sense?
Nope. Yep, I get what you're saying, but nope. Nope. Mm-mm. What you need, and what most people need, and what most people are finding is that we communicate, one autistic person, one neurodivergent person to another, beautifully, and actually better than one neurotypical person to another communicates.
I mean,
But
I
being
met,
able to speak with someone
yeah,
who,
I met two autistic person. I really love them. So I don't know. I'm 2 for 2 right now.
I love it. But that's just because you're just a super cool guy, Joey. I think you have definitely got it where you converse in a beautiful way with all neurotypes, and I love that.
Okay.
But it's
Yeah, I mean, I really get
but I
along
think
with them.
it's,
So like, I don't know. Like, I might have found my people right here.
hey, you definitely found your person over here. You definitely my people, Joey. But I think it's in that very beginning, you need to have another autistic person who gets it, who knows what it's like to live in this type of brain, in this type of body. You know, you wouldn't expect somebody who doesn't have your physical condition to ever really understand what it's like to experience it. You need to talk to somebody else who has the same exact
You know
condition
what's weird? I actually,
so they know what
what's
it
weird
feels
is I
like.
actually don't care if the other person has what I have. I don't hang out with any of my disease people at all. Like, it makes,
Right, but I'm saying if you were trying to learn more about just finding connection with somebody that really got it, like really understood it, you wouldn't
yeah, I
go
think
talk
what
to,
makes yours more challenging is the emotional. And like, you say you have trouble expressing your feelings. So it's a weird paradox because you're trying to explain to someone your difficulty of explaining of what you're feeling, you know?
it can be, but what's interesting is that I found when I converse with other autistics who are also alexithymic, we have this understanding
Yeah, definitely. You don't have to explain
that
it.
goes without, we don't have to mansplain it. We get it,
Yeah.
right? That's why it's really important to find other autistic people to talk
So,
to and not just autism
so it
experts.
seemed that the way you, I don't know, it's hard to say the word. I don't know if to say healed or you had like epiphany, I guess, or understand it until you met other autistic people. I guess, especially women late diagnosed, and then you were able to like, once you have that like establishment of you found your people, then you start to look back at your life and exchange stories, and then you were able to connect the dots. Then, so are you saying that you didn't go to therapy at all, and you just kind of learned to talking to each other and piecing it together yourself?
I had been through a good bit of therapy in my 20s and 30s, and I didn't need it in my 40s. It wasn't helping me. And I had never found anybody, I mean, whether they use CBT or EMDR or whatever, it didn't work for me. It didn't speak my language. And I had to figure it out for myself. I had to do a lot of work on my own. And, and a lot of that happened once I did a lot of that work for myself, then going out and just having these conversations with other autistic people. That was probably worth more than 30 years of therapy could ever accomplish.
So, like, I know you are married and have kids and looking at ways to right your wrongs in the past or at least understand your life. With that being said, is it conflicting to not change since you found someone that loves you for you?
I don't think I understand what you're saying.
Because like so like you grew up having to mask yourself so you're not bullied and such, but now you found someone that loves you for you. So are you kind of stuck in the not to really mask but be your fully self because you found someone that truly loves you for you? Or like do you switch roles? So like at home you be like your free self, but when you're in public, you have to mask a little bit just because people won't understand you as much as like I understand you.
No, not really. No, no. I mean, there's certain, like, I show up appropriately in appropriate ways and appropriate situations, and that's just a human thing. But I don't mask or camouflage. Certainly not in my
Mm-hmm.
relationships, and certainly not as a way to operate in the world. Sure, we all don a mask. Every person does. I mean, you don't show up to a business meeting, you know, cussing and, showing up in your dirty clothes and unwashed hair. I mean, you show up appropriately for the situation, and That's just human. We do that. And yeah, I do that too. But I'm also going to show up in that business meeting in the appropriate way, but I'm also going to show up as me. I'm going to probably ask more questions. I'm going to say, hey, I really need to get the bullet points for this meeting ahead of time, so I have time to formulate and make sure I'm prepared for this. I've learned what accommodations I need in my life and in work. I'm not going to cover that up anymore. I did that a long time. Not doing it anymore.
So you have a video with travel goddess Chalise Hurd, and you were talking about their unique trait. She said she could know wherever she is without looking at a map, which is insane. So what is your special trait?
I don't know.
Oh, no.
I think just being me is my special trait. I am an idea factory. That's probably my trait, Joey. I'm an idea factory. I have a million creative ideas, business ideas, project ideas, 24/7. I think I'm an idea factory. That's my autistic
But is it fair?
Trait, whatever you want to call it.
Is it fair to say that all autistic people have a special trait, or is that more of a insulting question then? Because maybe not every...
I think it's more fair to say all humans have their own special trait.
Nah, I don't think so. I think some are just born not gonna, they're born to pay taxes and go away.
Joey, that is a really dire view, man.
No, I mean, think about it. Some people that just go through life, pay taxes, whatever, and then that's it. Like, there's some people that gotta change the world, and some people just don't. I mean, that's kind of the reality of it. Like, you gotta do something.
I think everyone does.
Yeah, I mean, I guess everyone, makes an impact in the world, but like, some just make larger impacts in their world that, like, you're making a big impact with the world. Like, I'm sure it's intimidating to release something that, anyone could watch your video, like, anywhere in the world. It's unreal sometimes.
Yeah. I mean, I think last time I looked, my autistic brain is in 67 countries.
Wow. Yeah, it's like, there'd be countries that I have no idea existed, too.
I looked at the list and I'm like, whoa. I'm like, Chalise, do you know where this is?
So I know we've been talking about traits, so we all know autism is not linear and affects everyone differently. What would you say is your worst trait that you have that you would want to get rid of?
I don't. No. Because if I got rid of them, then I wouldn't be me. I'm harmony of all things, and I don't look at a trait as good or bad. I look at it as it's just part of me. Some things make life a little challenging and difficult, but that's all I know. But I also know that the things that I've struggled with and that have been a challenge or that are a challenge and difficult, they've also made me who I am. And I like who I am for the first time in my life. I love who I am. And I wouldn't change it, so I wouldn't get rid of any of it. Good, bad, or ugly, or however you want to label it.
I mean, I feel like your answer would be totally different if I asked you like 10 years ago.
Oh, yeah. I'd probably have a laundry list 10 years ago. I wouldn't have seen any of it. I'd have had a laundry list. I'd probably maybe even told you one or two things if I was on a good day that I liked about myself. The rest of it, I'd have given you the whole list of sucks and you can have it.
Well, I guess one of the things you could say is all the medicine you were taking. Well, we all know medicine is just, I don't think there's any medicine in the world that has no side effects at all. Something has to happen to a drug. I don't know why, but like, I guess God made it that way. It had to have a side effect. Like, why? Why can't it just help me and it call it a day?
Yeah, that'd be nice, wouldn't it?
So I know you mentioned with your autism that you like everything controlled, and then or maybe I'm getting it messed up. I think I'm getting messed up. Is it autism that you want everything in control, and then ADHD, you want to have some novelty to it, or is it vice versa?
You got it. That's right. My autism wants structure. My ADHD wants novelty. Okay,
so the question is, so I know we were emailing, and you wanted me to use your picture and control your image, and like use your biography, and I understand it to an extent, but I also want it to be like about like my podcast and the way I want shows. So how did it make you feel when I said no to you?
Oh, I was just trying to understand. It didn't bother me. I didn't care. It was just, I was like, oh, well, normally I provide this because this is normally what happens is people are like, send me a headshot, send me your bio. And you were like, I was like, oh, I'll send you my headshot, I'll send you my bio. And you're like, no, I don't want that. You keep your stuff. And I was like, oh, okay. And I was like, that's not expected. It's different. You changed it on me. So then I was like, oh, okay. Well, explain to me what do you mean? Why are we doing this? What are we doing? If we're not doing it like this, and this is what I'm used to doing, then what are we doing? So it wasn't a matter of like me being
Okay.
difficult or me like not wanting to do it or anything like that. It was more like, oh, okay, this is different. I'm not used to this, but I want to understand it. Like this is new. So
Ah,
explain it to
yeah.
me. Let me know your why. And I'm all for it because I'm like, this might be something I want to do. I might want to try what Joey's
Um,
doing. That's what was going through my brain.
it's kind of weird because we're both having a misunderstanding of the situation. Okay, for one, I thought that you wanted to control your image, but that's where I was going at. But the way I was going in my mind is that, for one, I think it's extremely lazy when someone, if you're interviewing someone and they send you the information, I find it extremely lazy. Like, I don't want you to do any work on yourself. I want you to come on the podcast, like, obviously, you share, and I just want you to have fun and talk about it. I don't want you to do any extra work. And I just find it extremely lazy for a host to, like, make you send you information and articles. It's just pure laziness. Like, anyone can do research.
See, I love this. I love we're having this conversation because I so respect and appreciate your opinion and your viewpoint and where you're coming from with this. And I think it's so beautiful. I think I'm gonna adopt some of this.
No,
I've learned a lot from you
yeah,
in this.
I've been on,
Because I'm the same way. I'm like, I do my homework on my guest and I know, I have my questions, I know about them. But I think it's one of those things where I do ask for a headshot. I don't use them very often. I haven't used one the last couple of times because of you and my friend Callum talking more about just sort of setting because like one of the things you said is like, oh no, I want to use a shot from the interview because then people know what they're going to get and
yeah.
what it feels the same when they show up. And I loved that. So I took that to heart. I learned something from you. You did that for me. Thank
Yeah.
you. And I just love this. Like, this is what's so important about communication is just like, oh, well, you have the story you tell yourself about why somebody's asking you something. And you're like, oh, okay, well, that's different. And for me, I'm more like curious now. I don't like get offended or upset or frustrated with somebody. I'm just like, oh, okay, well, normally I do this, but you want to do it different. So tell me, why? I don't get it. And it's not, and this is what happens a lot in the autistic world, especially in the workforce, is that people who are autistic, because we ask questions, we're trying to understand, or we're trying to understand a why or a detail so that it makes
Hmm.
sense to us so that we can execute it because we want to execute
Yeah.
what somebody is asking us for. And a lot of times people who are in managerial roles or your upper level support and you're asking these questions, they take it as you're being defiant or you're defying my authority or you're being difficult. And so that's really a big breakdown area in communication and perception and communication styles that shows up. And I love that we're able to highlight
Yeah.
this. This is
I
awesome.
actually, mm, I actually, like, have you on a calendar because you said yeah, and then you, like, gave me your headshot and you didn't email me for a couple of days. So I actually thought that you didn't like me for that. So I actually removed you from my
Oh
calendar,
no.
and then
Oh
no,
no.
and then you said yes, like a couple days later. And I'm like, oh, I guess we're back on again. I really thought that you really cared about your image and you didn't want me to, like, tarnish it or whatever.
Oh
Which,
no, not at all. Oh, that was the absolute opposite. Oh no. And I get so many emails. I get hundreds and it takes me a little while
mhm,
sometimes to get through all of
yeah.
them. So it does sometimes take me a couple days to get back and I'm so sorry you thought
No,
that.
I mean, that's
No.
what I mean. I was just going what I thought was happening. So I was like, I guess we're doing it, but, like, I just find it extremely lazy when, if you're gonna interview someone, they should be the one doing the research, doing the heavy lifting. Like, it's really annoying when you go on another person's podcast and you're explaining yourself. Like, tell me about yourself. Like, no, like, I do the heavy lifting. I'm doing the one introducing. Like, every conversation is the same. What disease do you have? What are your symptoms? It's the same. I mean, it varies with the guest, with the host, but, I just do the heavy lifting. I know a lot about you, probably more than you probably remember, in a little creepy way, I guess. But, I come and Yeah, but I come into every single interview prepared, and everything is tailored to you. I'm a very curious person, which is a very great trait. So I'll be like, so I'll read.
I
Yeah,
agree.
so I'll read your articles and be like, hey, I want to talk about this a little more and such, and I'm learning so much about. It's weird. I didn't learn about anything about pods actually. You never mentioned it, or maybe not in the past 6 months, which was new. But I know my stuff. I always try to be. I want to be prepared, but I also don't want to be very professional. 'Cause I don't want it to seem like I'm just asking you a question and we're just drilling through them, either. But it's just, and then I just want to have fun with them and get to know them. To me, it's like a casual thing and with professionalism to it. But I just want you to come here, have fun, don't have to stress about anything, and have great. And I hope it starts about me because I'm a very new person, so no one's expecting this kind of professionalism out of a podcast. So I know a lot of people are blown away by the end. Wow, this guy really did his research and dude is great. I was on another interview and I was so much better than him, and it really turned me off. Everyone was like, "The podcast is great," and stuff. I was really turned off by him because when I got into the podcast, he asked me to spell my disease, and I'm like, "You could have Googled that before I came on here." And and that really just turned me off for the whole interview.
I so appreciate that you take time to do what you do in the way that you do it. I really do. And it does come through and it makes a difference.
Yeah, it's just
Because I think so often, I think you and I both have had this experience. Show up on a show and they're like, okay, and they didn't even know what your name was when they sat down. It just somehow was on their calendar and they hadn't really paid attention, and they just show up, and I'm just like, okay, this doesn't feel like you really care anything about me at all.
no, it's just
And it's just the opposite when I showed up on this show. Is like, Joey really cares. Like, he
yeah.
took the time,
Yeah, it's I put time and effort in it. I wanted to show and have a great conversation because everyone brings something different to the table. People probably ask the same 5 questions and call it a day, but no, I put the effort in. It's just, well, people don't watch my other videos, so they don't really understand how much effort I put into until they're actually on it. So, but yeah, there's
Oh, well, I did. I'm kind of like you. I did my research with watched and listened to some of your other episodes, and I'm like, whoa, Joey does the time. Like, he's good.
yeah.
I'm like, I was over here taking notes on how can I be more like Joey.
No, I mean, I saw my competition. The bar was really low, and my niche is the rare disease chronic ill community, and the bar was pretty low. So it's I'm just gonna set the bar high and keep it that way. I know when one on the other podcast I did that I was talking about that asked me what my disease was, I knew they had to step up their game because I'm coming into this game hard, and but yeah, I wanna. I don't know. It's fun to me, and I think it's the right thing to do if you're gonna interview someone. My inspiration is actually. Have you ever heard of a show called Hot Ones with Sean Evans?
No.
Oh, so you're gonna have your mind blown right now. So here we go. So the guy named Sean Evans,
Okay.
and he interviewed someone, but they during the pandemic they interview by camera, but it's all in one-on-one. And he interviews celebrities, so it's a lot easier. But what he does is that he'll ask a question, but every question you answer, you eat hot wing. So he has 10 chicken wings, and each wing gets hotter and hotter. So
Oh my
yeah,
gosh.
so
I love hot stuff, so that'd be fun.
you can buy a set actually and do it at home. But I'm
Oh, really?
yeah, I'll send it to you after this. So call Hot One, but the thing about it is that they're crying and stuff, which is hilarious to watch. But the thing that I loved a lot about it is that for one, he does a lot of research that I do, so I copy that, and it always warms my heart when the guest would be like, oh, wow, you really did your research, or how did you know that? So I always try to go for that moment of doing that, people would be like, you really did your research coming into this, and people are not expecting it, which is kind of terrible, and I guess it makes sense. So, but yeah, I come in with a lot of effort here, and I just hope it's appreciated over long term.
I appreciate
Yeah.
it. It meant a lot to me.
No, I mean,
And I thank you for it.
yeah, I mean, I think every single guest I had appreciated the too. It warms my heart. There'll be some people that are hesitant to be on or like come back to me, and then they'll come back to me a couple days later and be like, "Hey, I want to be on your podcast." Like, sweet, because I'm a new person. Like, I don't have like a reputation. I'm not on Spotify, I'm not paid $100 million like Joe Rogan, But I gotta start from somewhere. I'm grateful for.
Gee, where can we get on that bandwagon?
No, it just like if I'm gonna do something, I'm gonna do it 100% me, and you can't deny I guess the skill and ability. Like, and I watch myself too. So like, I know I'm funny. I know I talk well. I ask great questions. So my ego is even higher. Like, I don't need anyone's approval, which is amazing to me.
You got your own, but you got mine too.
Yeah.
I'm cheering
But
for
we're
you.
gonna go back to you because I know before we were talking about all of this. That's all about you and not me. Before I take a mic away from you, is there anything you want to promote? Any words of wisdom, the winning lottery numbers? The mic is all yours.
Oh, wish I had the lottery winning numbers. Oh man, I love it. If you are just coming to the knowledge that you are autistic, you are not alone. You are not broken. Who you are is who you are meant to be. There is a place for you in the world. And if you are looking to understand more about your neurotype, more about your communication styles, and if you suspect that you might be an autistic burnout, I do have the top 20 warning signs you may be an autistic burnout to help you navigate and identify that. And I'm here at Mind Your Autistic Brain, and if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer. I live over on Instagram at Social Audie, and I'm happy to answer anything and help you in any way that I can.
Yeah, like everyone knows from this episode that you're a great person. All the links are in the description below. Thank you